good morning, good evening, and to some, good night. It is another one of those nights, and here I am, once again, dwelling upon all the things that could be, all the things that should be, perhaps might be. And I'm left to wonder, I'm left to dwell and cycle through them, and I think we're starting to go towards, I suppose, a positive turn, and I wanted this to be a bit of a positive series. You know, we've looked at the notion of dreams and how hope can be this thing which inspires us to continually pursue the greater notion of life, and hope is really that help that sustains us rather than the fulfillment itself. Then we, which I suppose is an encouragement that even if you don't get your dreams, the dream itself is doing its job. And then we went on to the universe and how the security of our mind often allows us to feel less vulnerable. It makes us to feel protected, but it's also the very thing that stops us from connecting to others. And then we went on to time and the effects of that, and then the great uniters, how humanity is ultimately united by these two factors to remind us that ultimately we're not so different from one another. And recently we've kicked back with kind of a new series about looking at what is true, and perhaps not just necessarily what is true, but how do we navigate what we don't necessarily know is true or not. How do we exist in this world? And we ended last week on a very positive note that perhaps the sole purpose of us is to remember this forgotten world, remember the world outside our window, and once more take up our sticks and make it beautiful again. Tend to your own garden, a little bit Voltaire-ish. So where does it leave us? And I think I want to tackle in this topic tonight, I've called it a guru's guide through the spirit realms. A guru's guide through the spirit realms. And I think the notion that I wish to wrestle with tonight is definitely the popularized and increasing practice of escapism. So we have even ideas such as reality shifting in this day and age, and with the multiverse becoming more and more, whether it's a desired truth that we're trying to create, whether it is a potential, possibility, it's not necessarily what we want to dissect tonight, but it's definitely something that's going more into pop culture, and with it becoming more into pop culture, it's conquering the general public's mind in a sense of what started off in perhaps theoretical physics has escaped that realm, or that idea of being theoretical or possibility, and has really hit the ground running with everyone in society being like, well, this is what we want. We have shows like Rick and Morty, Doctor Strange, just trying to think who else. there's been so many stories of people meditating to different realms, and the desire to sort of escape from our world and go to a new one. And like I said before, this practice of reality shifting, well, that's quite a new term and a new trend, where people basically write their desired world and then try to enter it. It's very much this meditative practice to have the world as you desire it, and to exist in that world through the possibility only in your mind's region. And what I want to kind of discuss, and why I called it a Guru's Guide through the spiritual realms and all that sort of stuff, is because we're going back to the ancient practice of almost fleeing the world as it is. We've kind of gone to this state of despair in this modern age. The iPhone, it's very much about I, me. It's the ego driven. It's that Narcissus looking into the reflection and drowning upon it. We're so caught up with our desires that we're becoming disgruntled with the way the world is, and we desire it for what it could never be. And then so we have to create these stories of let's get out of here. So we're going further and deeper and deeper and deeper into technology, into gaming, into media, TV series, anything that can help us deny what is really going on in the outside regions. So this is definitely becoming more and more increased. People are becoming terrified of a thought, and becoming terrified of anything that can tether them back to their immediate circumstances. And so where does it leave us? Where does this leave us with this idea of the multiverse? Well, if there is a multiverse, then there's a universe where you're happy, where you have everything that you desire. And I don't want to do the Alan Watts experiment. If you want to do that, you can listen to Alan Watts. I think he's a fantastic speaker. And he basically does this experiment that he says, if you dreamed up everything you could ever have, and every night when you went to sleep you could have everything you ever wanted, he said, basically he's on to say you'd soon become bored with it, and you'd want things to be more of a surprise, and finally you'd get back to the state of your life. And I don't want to do that, but I want to look at some concepts though that might help us get to the same step, or the final solution, just taking you though on a different journey. So in Hindu beliefs, in Hindu practices, you're probably super aware of it anyway, there's this idea of the 14 lokas. And so these 14 realms, and that's kind of why we're going into this multiverse, 14 realms, the guide of the spirit realms. It's 14 lokas, but humanity predominantly, or most who are, certainly who are not enlightened, remain in samsara. They remain in these 6 realms, and they cannot escape them until they reach enlightenment. So we have, going from the top to the bottom of the realms, we have, the realm of the devas, or the deva, which is like your high level, often mistaken for, I guess, what Westerners would interpret as a heaven type place of paradise, but it's not, because you can still die in this deva realm and then be rebirthed, and then you go down a notch, and it's the Asuras, and they're often full of rage and anger. You go to the human level, that's the Manusa, that's the realm most popular for being able to find enlightenment. The Tiriac, that's the realm of the animals, just below the humans. the Praetor, which is like, I suppose, your ghouls or your souls unsatisfied. Perhaps their desires weren't satisfied in their life as a human, so they've come back restless. And then the Naraka, or Naraka, and that is your beings of the lowest level, often full of greed and gluttony and laziness, things like that. And basically the idea goes that you cycle through these 6 stages, 7, just getting my thoughts confused, but you go through these 6 stages indefinitely, repeatedly, this cycle. So the core concept behind Hinduism, in a way, maybe Buddhism, maybe I am going a little bit more into the realms of Buddhism. The Hindus still have the kind of concept, get out of reincarnation, but really more Buddhism, this idea of becoming enlightened, entering nirvana. I believe the Hindus call it moksha, but either way, it's this idea of leaving this cycle, leaving the earth, and the same issue that we're finding in this day and age, leaving the earth, fleeing, escapism, reality shifting, diving into technology. Same philosophy. That's what I'm trying to show you. Is same philosophy as the Hindus. Reality is bad, even the best of reality, even the heaven. And let's just say, we switch out the diva plane for, let's say, riches and mansions, Beverly Hills. Even the best of existence is still terrible, and we must escape it. And you continue on with this idea. Okay, well then, even the Ashura realm, which might be like your military government departments, which have heaps of benefits, but they're still filled with anger and rage. And then your human realm, which might be your day-to-day jobs, your animal realm, working at a zoo, safaris. You can keep going on and on, but looking at the idea of this is the world we're in, and all the faults that come with it, and the 6 stages that we cycle through, the ultimate desire is to escape. We go to work these days and we go, I can't wait to go home. So it's always about escaping. Our mind is always on escaping. That life is not something to enjoy, life is something to escape. Or rather, death is something to escape and life is something to enjoy. But life always seems at the end. Life is always something just out of our reach. Once this happens, then I will be alive. But I'm always brought back into this idea of, you're alive now. And so we keep going around this cycle as a race, not even just in Hindu thought. It's we keep going around this idea even now in this modern age of escapism. This guide through the 6 realms, or the spiritual realms, is that we got to get out of here. We're on a sinking ship. We're on the Titanic. We have to get out. We have to run. We have to flee. And so there's so many religions. Let's have a look. Even, for example, the Quran. The idea is this world is impure. We have to leave. What else is there? Shintoism, not so much, but there's certainly plenty of other trains of thought, which is that this world is terrible. The only way, let's say Neoplatism, the only way is to unite with the one. I suppose you could say that's a bit of Taoism as well, not necessarily a little bit, but basically at the core of a lot of the the faiths is that everything's gone to kaput. We got to get out of here. We have to run. We have to flee. It's all bad, and even the best of it is still terrible. The only way is to really escape, to really get out of there, to really go through the realms and get beyond the top. Get beyond the Deva realm to enter into the other few lokas. And definitely there's 14 lokas, so there's 14 different realms, and there's worse ones, but for the ones that we can sort of, or the ones that I guess humanity desires is the idea of nirvana, of complete and utter escape, complete and utter bliss. It's that what we're finding in this day and age with the phone is always escaping to it for that sense of dopamine, of that sense of solace, that idea of even I guess, a moment of nirvana, a moment of bliss, but wanting to sustain it. And as a society with the consumerism and the capitalism, we're doing anything we can to continue that bliss, to continue even if it comes at ignorance. And what I want to sort of propose tonight is this other thought, kind of a neglected one, and I was sort of reading about it recently, and I was like, I didn't see that before. And it's one that's kind of strange, and even strange bringing up, but the Judaistic view, and I suppose you could say it leads on to some of Christ's teaching, but the idea that I think you already know it, but the 6 days, just as we talked about the 6 steps of samsara, it's interesting you read about the 6 days. And the 6 days is very different to the cycle of samsara, in the sense that it goes, on this day God did this and it was good, and it's not just and it was good, it even says like God says it was good, so it's good. And it's that repetition. If you read it, you'll be like, this is very repetitive, what's going on? But you can't help with the idea of, God saw that it was good. And so we go, okay, well, it's all supposed to be good. Why is everything terrible? And the reason I wanted to bring up Christ as well is because later on Christ says to the Pharisees, it's not what goes in that defiles you, but what comes out of you that defiles the world. And if you look at that and you go, oh, okay, what's Christ talking about? And then you go back to this idea of God creating the world and saying everything was good. Well, what happens is Eve sees this apple, and for centuries it's like, what is this? Apple. Well, no, it wasn't actually an apple. That was the Latin translation, because apple in the Latin word sounded very similar to the Latin word meaning evil, so hence the whole thing with the apple, but that doesn't matter. The point is that if the world was all good, what Eve desires, comes from the inside, has a desire for this fruit so that she can gain wisdom without God. And so she desires this, and she takes it and she eats it. And then from that came all the badness in the world. Not to say that the world was bad, rather the way that we interacted with the world has led to it being terrible. And I want to quote something that there's a very famous author, he's called Maximus the Confessor, and he writes something that just made sense. It just sort of, all this stuff that I was reading, I was confusing, repetitive, what's going on here, perhaps outdated, all these sorts of thoughts that you regularly get. But Maximus the Confessor writes, food is not evil, gluttony is. Child beating is, not child beating, that'd be horrible. And he certainly doesn't talk about anything like that. He says childbearing is not evil, but fornication is. Money is not evil, but avarice is. Glory is not evil, but vainglory is. Indeed, there is no evil in existing things, but only in their misuse. And if you were to, cut away the beginning of it and just go with that last line, indeed, there is no evil in existing things, but only in their misuse. Everything starts to make sense that throughout these writings, these Hebraic writings, or Judaistic writings, you have this cycle of, Eve sees the apple, determines it was good even though God said it was bad. He determined everything else good, and it's basically, are you going to accept what I say is good, or are you going to determine it for yourself? And we begin to see things as evil, and so we misuse them, and it happens many times over. There's repetition of seeing. David saw Bathsheba, all those sorts of things. Achan saw the robe. There's all these characters who afterwards see. And Christ is like, well, it's not about these external things, it's about what's going on inside. It's about what's going on internally. And then he talks about the eye, and he says about, there's the generous eye, which fills the body with light, and then there's a stingy eye, which fills the body with darkness. And the stingy eye is always looking at the world as lack, like Eve's eye, going, hey, hold on, I'm missing something here, I'm missing wisdom. And the generous eye says, look at everything that's been given to me. And then Christ goes on to say, look at the birds, look at the lilies. Are they worried? No. They see the abundance, but you don't see the abundance, type of thing. I'm not quoting directly, so don't be like, later on reading and be like, where the heck does he say that? No, I'm not quoting directly. I'm summarizing, paraphrasing. But it's the idea that he talks about these two eyes, and he says, the eye is like a lamp. When the eye is healthy, the body is filled with light. And when it is unhealthy, the body is filled with darkness. And if you see the darkness as light, how deep the darkness is, that's, it's a very popular quote, but it has nothing to do about what you see or anything to do with the state of the earth. What it's talking about is the healthiness of the eye. See, when your eye gets cataracts, yourself is getting in the way of you seeing. Your ego is getting in the way of you being able to see the world. The object of seeing in life is not to see you, but to see the world. And I know this is a basic idea, and again, it's nothing groundbreaking. I'm not trying to do anything crazy. But this whole idea of the eye is when Eve eats the apple and Adam eats the apple, it says, well, the fruit, okay, sorry, not apple, it's just so ingrained in my head. But when they eat this fruit, it says their eyes were open, but it actually seems like their eyes were closed because they were open to themselves. They were blinded by themselves, and they're concerned with themselves. So they can no longer see each other in their natural form. They have to cover themselves. They're now insecure, and the rest of humanity's mind is always on the self. Always, if you will, this stingy eye, always on the lack. And that's why I was talking about this escapism model, this samsara model that says, we got to get out of here. Well, actually, there's a whole different model that the Jews, sort of promote. Actually, no, the world is good. What's bad is your eyesight. Get that checked out, type of thing. Take the plank, maybe that's why Christ said, take the plank out of your own eyes, I don't know. But I think there's something to that. I think there's something to this. That if you really want a guru to get you through the spirit realms, here's the one, here's the thing. Look outside your world and actually realize, look at the lilies, look at the birds. I'm obviously having a little bit of fun here, but in all seriousness, start to look at the world and not look at yourself, not be an Adam or an Eve and look at your own nakedness and be like, oh man, here's all these flaws. I think that's when our eyes were closed. And later on, Paul has the scales removed off his eyes, so I don't know if there's some sort of idea that their eyes were actually scaled, that they actually start to, almost in a sense, have the cataracts of the ego, of the, oh no, I'm naked, what will Eve think of me, I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed. Before, he was only noticing Eve, and Eve was only noticing Adam. And when we start to get insecure, I don't want to lose you with this idea, by the way, I'm sorry if you're like, I'm so confused. I'm trying to say at a practical level is right now, it's always about me, the narcissism, looking in the mirror, taken away, trying to make yourself something more than what you are, which is human. But if you take the focus of yourself, like the cataracts, you're blind to yourself. If you get that removed, if you have a healthy eye, if you have a generous eye, if you see everything outside of yourself, you'll begin to notice how much beauty there is in life. Because we have two eyes facing outwards, not inwards. We have two eyes facing outwards to notice all the beauty around us. To be like, hey, you're looking really good today. And they'll be like, thanks, wow, I was feeling terrible about myself. Because often we're our worst critics. So if we're trying to compliment ourselves, we're going about it the wrong way. If you go out and you go compliment a bunch of people, you say, hey, you're looking beautiful. Hey, you're looking really nice. Oh, hey, that was really kind of you the other day. If you use your ears, which we have two of again, 2 eyes, 2 ears, we're using those things to hear, to see, noticing all the goodness of the world, and then complimenting people of that goodness. Hey, you're doing really well here. You're doing really well there. They'll start to go, wow, that's incredible. And then they'll be like, hey, you're a really kind person. And then you'll be like, wow, I never thought of myself as a kind person. We have these eyes, we have these ears that are directed outwards so that we can notice the goodness of the world. So then why are we so fixated on escaping this world? Because we keep having the stingy eyes that say, hey, there's a lack, there's it's a terrible place, we got to get out of here, we got to get enlightened. There's all these other religions and all these other methods that are saying, like, you got to get out of here, you got to focus on you got to try and save yourself. The other method says, forget the self, let's just enjoy life, let's just see all the goodness, let's just bask in the glory. If you start really saying your world isn't bad, but you're the one that's making it bad, that's a lot easier to change. Christ is saying it's not what goes in, it's what goes out that makes you impure. And what I was saying before is that, there is no evil thing, the Maximus. It is only the misuse. How good. Fantastic. This day and age this world is not evil because of the world. It's evil because of the way we're interacting with the world. We're misusing it. We're creating nuclear weapons. Are you serious? Is that the only thing uranium can be used for? Let it stay in the dirt. We're misusing gold. We're putting it as something better than humanity. We're making all these systems that are complicated. The birds do not worry about housing prices. They don't have someone claiming tax or building roads. They just get about their business. All the animals in the world. Dogs aren't even so stupid that when they get in a fight, they're not destroying the environment around them. When we get in a fight, we send nuclear bombs everywhere. What's going on, humanity? Wake up. What are you doing? Crazy. We don't need any more guns. We're misusing the environment around us to create destruction when we could be using it to create life, when we could be complementing one another, loving one another, changing the world, making it, not even necessarily making it, but revealing the goodness that was already there. We don't have to keep escaping. And even, people go, oh, Christians, they go to heaven. No, that's a misunderstanding. Their thing is not to reach nirvana. Their thing is go back to the earth, the new heaven and the new earth. It's like the same thing, but now doing it correctly. The time is now to start looking at the world again and going, hey, let's make this place beautiful. And that's what I wanted to finish on last week, and I kind of expanded this idea in a bigger way, that we gotta stop looking to escape this place and start making it beautiful once again. There was another book I was reading, I think it was called The Tree of Wisdom, and it said something like, I'm trying to remember, it was a great quote. It's something on the lines that, we can try and make something beautiful. Oh, actually, no, sorry. It goes something like this, whosoever does benefit to his enemy with straightforward intention, by so doing, all enemies will arrive at the state of folding their hands in devotion. And, that sounds a little bit kind of crazy, but it's this idea of if we go and seek out the best for our enemies, they'll return to us as friends in that sense, for us to sum it up, perhaps optimistically. But they further this point, and it goes, in desiring to injure your enemy, praise his inherent good qualities. What do evil thoughts of injury do? They injure you and not your enemy. Basically, what I was saying before is if you really want to change the environment around you, if you really want to stop all the bad stuff's going on, we got to change the way in which we think about our circumstances. If you really desire to injure your enemy, think of all the good aspects of them. That's the way to truly overcome them. Because if you think of all the negative stuff about them, the only person you're injuring is yourself. And that's, Marcus Aurelius says something similar when he goes along the lines of the greatest revenge is to be nothing like him who performed the injury. And Buddha talks about this idea of the second arrow, that the first arrow was circumstance. We got shot. That was terrible, external. The second arrow is the dwelling on the first. The idea that we can really change this world. We really can. We don't need to be jumping to the spiritual, going through all the realms looking to escape. Whether it's, spiritual, this reality shifting, which is probably more of a psychological, or a physiological with the retreating to the gym. I'm not saying these things are bad. I'm not saying it's terrible to meditate. I'm not saying it's bad to, dream of heaven or paradise or Eden or whatever whatever you want to call it. But I'm just saying, we can really begin to go, okay, let's change this world now by being different to the previous generations, which was creating all these weapons, which is creating all these problems, creating all this technology, which is leaving us lost and broken. It's time to start going, okay, what does the generous eye say compared to the stingy? Perhaps it's time to stop worrying and maybe start working. And not working in a negative way, like start working like you're lazy. No, like start working in a positive way, like, hey, maybe it's time to stop worrying and start working on seeing the beauty all around us. We don't need to escape this world. We need to embrace it and make it beautiful again. Or at least, perhaps not make it beautiful, but notice the beauty already in it. And start loving those around us instead of being in competition with them. The idea is not to see people as competition, but as a community. Changes your mindset. When you start seeing other as similar to yourself, you stop hating them so much. When you see them as foreign and different and an adversary, you begin to make them into an enemy. You begin to make them into rivals and saying, oh, this person is after the same resource I am, let's kill them. If you have a stingy eye, it doesn't matter how many people you kill, you always feel like you'll be in lack. You make sure no one survives. It's my family versus their family. But if you see the whole thing as family, as Socrates says, I'm not a citizen of Athens or Greek, but of the world. Oh, Greece, sorry, but of the world. You've been realizing, hey, this person's not so different from me, and we're both afraid of death. We're both, insecure. We're both, sometimes worried, and all these other things. Sometimes, we all desire to be loved. Instead of exposing that, I'm gonna be compassionate towards them. I'm gonna empathize with them. And that's the beginning to changing the world. And if you want to talk Christ, I suppose that's the first step of bringing heaven down to earth. It talks about this idea of this empowerment model about when we do these things, we're behaving like children of God. That in a way, the Christ method is to reveal the humanity in us all. That we can all be something divine if we allow it. And we can also be something, demonic and something awful and beastly. And I know that I'm going in a bit into, Aristotle or Michelangelo Giovanni or something like that. On the Oration of the Being of Man or something. That's his book, along the lines. Or On the Oration of the Dignity of Man or something like that. And I don't want to steal from their works, but yes, something along those lines, that we have this opportunity to choose. And which path are you going to take? So with that in mind, I just want to say thank you for listening, and as always, good morning, good evening, and to some, good night.